Well, hey everybody, it's been a really long time between videos again. I've wanted to do this one for a couple of weeks. I was real sick there for a while, and my voice pretty well gave out on me. Um, Joe Ely died on December 15th of this year, of 2025. And I remember I was sitting outside, completely, completely doing what you should when you have a cold and are ill. And I was having rye whiskey and a cigar while listening to I think it was Van Morrison that night. I don't always doom scroll while listening to music, but I just happened to, and I saw that Joe Ely had passed that day, and my heart just sank. Um, I I haven't been into Ely for as long as I would like. Uh, I came into his music because of his cover of "The Road Goes On Forever" by Robert Earl Keen, and Robert Keen is another one I didn't get into until after some of the other Texas guys, even though their names, they're saints down there in Texas. They never made it as huge worldwide. They had a good following. But Joe Ely, I've done a lot of reading on him. So many quotes and tributes have come out, which has made me really happy to see. It was one of those, he was kind of described as if you know songwriters. He was your favorite songwriter's favorite songwriter. And he played marathon sessions and he blended country, folk, blues, hillbilly, rock and roll, rockabilly, Tex-Mex. Uh, he was all over the board musically. In 1984, he put out an album that was recorded on computer, which had never really been done before. Um, and I'll say this, so I'm sort of all over the place with this tribute. He put out 16 studio records, and if you believe Wikipedia, six live albums, one of which was a live EP released on a label he had nothing to do with. And so, excuse me, it's out there somewhere. I don't own a copy because Ely never saw a dime of it, as far as I know, from what I can tell. Um, but he had five official studio live albums, some recorded, uh, at a certain time, and others were archival releases. And I'm not going to go into all those because I have a ranking the Joe Ely albums YouTube video back some years ago. So I got into his music probably around 2014, 2015-ish. And I managed to snag the live album that I had heard The Road Goes On Forever on. And the collecting kind of went from there, but I decided in 2019 and 2020 I was going to complete my Joe Ely discography, and I have. And there's one more album he released this year that went under my radar, wasn't able to get a copy of. Uh, Still going to order it for certain. So I have everything except the final record. And that was released on his own label, and it didn't get a whole lot of attention. It should have, I'm sure. And I've heard parts of it, but I'm still waiting, as I do with so many artists, to get it and listen to it in full. Anyway, so I did not know that Joe isn't even close to his real name. He was born Earl Reuel Ely Jr. And if somebody out there knows that I'm pronouncing Rewell incorrectly, maybe sound it out phonetically underneath. I don't know, but just don't be rude about it. So he was born February 9th, 1947 in Amarillo, which again, I didn't realize. I always knew him as a Lubbock person. He grew up in Lubbock. Um, and it was those Amarillo and Lubbock connections where in 1971, he and two other icons. One somewhat well known, one not as well known. Butch Hancock isn't quite as well known. Jimmy Dale Gilmore knows every country and western song ever written. And they formed the Flatlanders. And they recorded an album in 72, and it went nowhere. And it was re released years later, and they got back together off and on over the years, and they did shows and albums, and it was great. But for my money, and I like those collaborative records. I really do. I own some, not all. I need to finish my Flatlanders discography, but I have all of Joe Ely's minus the very last one. I'll take his solo work because, again, no two albums sounded the same. He blended all the genres that I spoke about earlier. His live performances were legendary. He was friends with Bruce Springsteen, even recorded with him, did shows with him. He would put on Springsteen-esque shows even in these little clubs. Ely would play till he was sweaty and exhausted for hours, and he gave the audience every bit of bang for its buck. Um, and it's captured on the live albums, except for one, uh, where it's just he and Joel Guzman, and it's acoustic and it's very beautiful. But anyway, I'm not going to go through all of his records. So he married his wife Sharon in 1983. They had one daughter, often named Marie, but according to Joe's obituary, which you can find online, her name was Maria Elena Ely, named after Buddy Holly's widow. Because of course, if you're from Lubbock, and all the guys have said this, uh, the ghost of Buddy Holly looms large up there, and it always probably will. Even if he's not as remembered as he should be these days in general, Buddy Holly was a panhandle legend. And so, anyway, I just, I'm not sitting here. I've gone through all the albums. Uh, These are not necessarily my top five that I rank, but I was thinking I want to give you guys, I'm going to do 4 studio records and a live record, that if you want to get into Ely, this is a wide range, but it's still accessible enough. Even the few albums in the 80s that had 80s production, I tend to absolutely loathe, hate, have utter disdain for 80s production. And yet with Ely's records, I can listen to them because the songs and the performances were so incredible. He's another one, I said this about Gordon Lightfoot. I don't think he ever released a bad song. I like some more than others, obviously. You're gonna as a fan. Um, but Joe Ely's work never bottomed out. It never took a dive in quality. Um, he had such a unique way of phrasing things. One of my favorite episodes of Austin City Limits is when it captured Ely with Guy Clark, Lyle Lovett, and John Hyatt on one of their songwriting, guitar pull tours those guys did from the 80s through the late 90s, early 2000s. Um, yeah, his song stood up with all the rest of those guys. I mean, because there's four, right? Four top tier writers, each of them. And Ely was easily the songwriting peer of Guy Clark, which is quite something. So, anywho, uh, I'm gonna go through. I have more CDs to show, even though I've got some of these on vinyl, just because it's easier. Um, the debut is fantastic. To me, that's like a 8.5 or 9 out of 10 record. But the first place to sort of start with Joe Ely is 1978's Honky Tonk Masquerade, the sophomore record. Cornbread Moon, Because of the Wind, which is my favorite Ely song of all time. Um, Boxcars, Jericho, Tonight I Think I'm Gonna Go Downtown, the title track, I'll Be Your Fool, Fingernails, which is, just a rollicking, great piano tune, West Texas Waltz, and then they end with, it ends with a cover of the old song Honky Tonkin'. And this is everything great about Texas music can be found here on this album. I've got the CD, I've got an original pressing, and I've got the repress from a couple of years ago that came out. All sound fantastic. If you're a collector, they're all worth having, because there's different little quirks and stuff to each. Um, yeah, so this is not a 1 to 5 or 5 to 1. This is chronologically. So Honky Tonk Masquerade, for sure. Um, this one may puzzle you a little bit because I don't know that I rated it that high back at the time, but looking back, and this gave Joe his nickname because he toured so much, just relentlessly, and put on such great shows. The Lord of the Highway record from 87, 86, 87, and I'm not seeing the date on here, but yeah, 87. There we go, on High Tone Records. Um, the only song I don't care for on here, because it's so long, is one called Letter to LA. It's a good song, but it goes on forever and ever and ever. But the title track, which was written by Butch Hancock, and that was the cool thing, is Ely, throughout his solo records, covered Butch Hancock and Jimmy Dale Gilmore songs all the time. Um, Don't Put a Lock on My Heart. Me and Billy the Kid is just funny as all get out. Letter to LA, No Rope Daisy-O, My Baby Thinks She's French is really great. Everybody Got Hammered is fun. Are You Listening, Lucky? Rove Dominoes. And, excuse me, uh, again, another one of my top 5 Ely songs for sure. This closes with Silver City. Just a down on your luck song, about a small town kid going to the big city and just eating it. Just it's, I'm sorry to spoil it if you don't know it, but it's a hard luck song. And I picked this one too because it's got Lubbock's own Bobby Keys on sax, who was notorious for playing with the Stones as well. He and Keith Richards had the exact same birthday. They were running buddies. And one of my favorite drummers, Davis McClarty, who to this day is still, there's Bobby and Davis, and the rest of the musicians are great too. Davis McClarty still plays with Terry Allen's Panhandle Mystery Band, which I love. And so those guys, the Panhandle Mystery Band and Ely's band shared a lot of members, the great Lloyd Maines being one of them. So there's number 2, Lord of the Highway. It's a slicker production, but I'm telling you, those songs are just killer. This to me is a criminally overlooked album from 95 called Letter to Laredo. And this is Joe getting back into more of the Americana stuff after doing some more rock and stuff. Um, after he passed, I went through and I listened to everything chronologically. And holy crap, did I forget what a great, 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 great album this is. And it's got a lot of the songs. I don't know if you can't really say the second half of his career because this is less than 20 years in, and his recording career went from 77 to 2025. So this is still technically in the first half, mid-period Ely, All Just to Get to You, one of his great and most well-known songs. Uh, just my favorites on here, and then Ranches and Rivers, Letter to Laredo. She Finally Spoke Spanish to Me, which is a sequel to a song from the debut in 77 called She Never Spoke Spanish to Me. Uh, and I'm 1,000 Miles from Home, the closer, just this wonderful ballad. Just, the songwriting on here is stellar, the performances. Um, yeah, just so that's number 3, the Letter to Laredo CD. As far as I know, it's only on CD. There was talk a couple of years ago of releasing a bunch on vinyl. We'll see, fingers crossed. That would be fantastic. Um, the last studio album I'm going to talk about is not his final studio album, but this is from 2012 called Satisfied at Last. Again, and I'm highlighting what I think here are a couple of criminally overlooked albums, but if you like Americana music and all of the subgenres that go into it, you're going to love all these. The Highway is My Home, not that much has changed. Satisfied at Last. He covers Billy Joe Shaver's Live Forever on here. Just, oh, sorry, 2011. I misspoke. It was 2011, not 2012. Again, great singer-songwriter, Texas folk Americana record right here. And then the album that started the collecting for me that I spoke of earlier, Live at Antone's. Antone's, of course, being the famous blues and roots music club down in Austin. Um, Opens with The Road Goes On Forever. And then All Just to Get to You, Ranches and Rivers, me and Billy the Kids on here. Just a Dallas by Jimmy Dale Gilmore, 1,000 Miles from Home, Roadhog, which is a killer upbeat rockabilly tune by Butch Hancock is on here. Um, and they close with just about a little over 4 minute version of "Oh Boy" by Buddy Holly, and it's got everything from screaming lead guitar to Squeezebox on it, and it's just this album right here. And I'll maybe I save it for last unintentionally, subconsciously, because this is where it started for me. So for all these other ones, these are all great albums. Go out and find them, buy them all. But Live at Antone's might just be the best gateway drug for Joe Ely's music. So the Lord of the, it's hard to say. See, and I made it this whole time without getting choked up, and I'm about to, because when a musician we whose work touches us leaves, I take it very personally, very internally, and so the Lord of the Highways left us, but his music is still here. So do yourselves a favor, go out, buy anything of his you don't have. If you don't have any of it, shame on you. Buy it all. Uh, I've given you my places to start. So this is my in memoriam for Joe Ely. Thank you, and a great writer and uh, online presence. Uh, said, uh, I'm blanking on her name. This I don't think I've ever had to do or done. Sorry, it came to me. Courtney S. Lennon, who writes about Billy Joe Shaver and Towns Van Zandt and all these guys. She has the hashtag out there. Thank you, Joe Ely. I believe she was the one who started it. I've used it from many times. And it used to be "Thank you, Joe Ely" Thursdays. I would play Joe Ely almost every Thursday and hashtag that on Instagram. So get out there, use that hashtag. Thank you, Joe Ely. Post your stuff. Let his family and friends know that you're still listening and you're always going to be. Um, Rest in peace, Joe. The last few years were hard. He had Lewy body dementia. He was inducted into the Austin City Limits Hall of Fame in 2023, I believe, and he performed all just to get to you. And you could see that he was in a little pain then. Nobody knew what kind of condition he was in. Um, Ultimately, it was pneumonia that got him, but he died in Taos, New Mexico, where he and his family lived in for 30 years. And he's at peace now, and he deserves it for all the good he did and all the positive energy he expelled into the world. Joe Ely deserves to rest in peace. So thank you, Joe Ely, and thank you guys for watching.